welcome. Today I'm going to tie up a very simple fly, one that can easily be tied in under 5 minutes. It's called a mop fly. Interesting thing is these things came around about 5 or 6 years ago because these mop heads that came out on the market basically made up of these little chenille pieces on them. People started cutting these off and making flies out of them. You can get these in all kinds of different colors, whether it's like a push mop or even a hand mop for washing your car or something like that. These actually came off of a pet rug. But you can get them in bright colors, you can get them in earth tone colors, all kinds of different colors, and they're great little materials for tying flies. If you do a search on mop flies and look at the image results, you'll see just a ton of different patterns. People came up with all kinds of different ways of tying these so that they look like a caddis or a worm, maybe even a mayfly, some sort of grub, or even crayfish. But today I'm going to tie my version of the mop fly, which I have been very successful with, and it's been very productive. And as I said, it's a very quick tie. You can have a bunch of these tied up in no time. And let's get started. Now we can start this fly, if needed, with the hook and the vise, because we may have to debarb this. We're going to put a tungsten bead on here. This is a 3/16 tungsten bead. These are from a company called Rip Lips Fly Fishing. These are a matte black finish, but you can get other colors if you want. Anyhow, when you go to put this onto the hook here, it may catch on the barb right there. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. So just in case, I'm going to go ahead and debarb the hook right here. And then when I slide this hook onto the bead, I take the smaller opening, I put the point of the hook into it. It will slide right around the bend without any problems. Then I'll set that into the vise so we can start the fly. The hook that we're tying on is a Tiemco 105. It's an egg hook. This is a size 6. It's a nice, strong, sturdy hook. You could use something a little bit smaller with a little bit narrower gap if you want to, but I like the short shank on this. For our mop fly, you can find these different mops, I think how they actually started, with these short little interesting chenille pieces on them. And you can get them in all kinds of different colors these days and for different applications. This actually was cut from a small piece of a pet rug. But what we're going to do is we're going to just cut one of these off. I'm going to cut this the full length, even though I'm not going to use the full length of it. So I'm going to cut this off, the backing, set that aside. This is similar to other chenilles in that there is 4 different threads that run down through this that make up the core of the material, and then all of these nylon pieces that are all woven in and around it. I want to have a body that's going to end up being about the length of the hook. So from the back of the bend right here to the front of the eye. However, I don't want to just cut this right here, because what I need to do is I need to pull some of the fluff out of here to expose those core fibers, so that when I lash this down to the hook, I'm actually lashing down those core fibers and not the fluff here. I have found that if I were to cut this off here, sometimes when I pull enough of the fibers out, and then I finally expose the core, I end up with too short a piece and the body is shorter than I wanted it. So I go ahead and cut it full length, and I just start pulling back, or I should say pulling out fibers here until I get a body length, which is what I'm looking for. At that point, what I'll do is cut off the excess core fibers here. I really only need just about 1/16 of an inch sticking out the end here, not much. So I'll cut those off, and I have just a little bit sticking out there. I'm going to attach my thread along the hook shank right in the middle of the hook shank right here. This is about where I want to tie in that body material. The reason is that when I go to tie in the body material right here and start to lash that down, and I get all the way back to where I'm just getting to the body right here, that's going to put me just past the bend of the hook. I'll lash all of this down. Be careful, I'm using a UTC 70 Denier Wapsi thread. I don't want to build up too much thread there, because after securing my thread here with a 5-turn whip finish and then cutting the thread off, I'm going to actually slide the bead on down on top of all of that, and I want the bead to push right up against the body just like this, so that the body looks like it's just coming right out from underneath the bead there. And that's going to give me about an eye length to 1.5 eye lengths right in front here. Now that's a little bit thin, so I'm going to go ahead and reattach my thread and build that up just a little bit more. And I would much rather have it be a little too thin than have it too thick, because then when you try to push this on there, it's actually going to push the whole body and everything down the hook. Again, securing my thread, remove that. I'm going to put just a drop of glue right in here. It'll soak down in there. That's just to help secure it a little bit so that that doesn't pull out. And then I'm going to slide the bead right back on top of all those thread wraps. And see, now it fits nice and snug right on top of the thread wraps, and the body looks like it comes right out of it. Now the reason that I like to have the bead back here and not up at the front of the hook, I should say by the eye of the hook, is that if the bead is all the way up front here, the fly tends to have a little bit more of a jigging action in the water. I want this to actually sink down and sink a little bit more uniform, or if nothing else, flutter down just a little bit. So I'm going to move the bead back to about the middle of the hook shank. I'm going to reattach my thread right in front of the bead here. I'm going to take my dubbing. I've got a black dubbing here. This is actually a custom dubbing. It's made of rabbit fur, black wool, and some black ice dub blended together. But you could use like an SLF, or even just some laser dub, something like that would work just fine. Even the Lifecycle, black Lifecycle dubbing would work fine. I like just a little bit of sparkle to it. I don't want much, but just something to catch a little sunlight here and there. I'm going to put just enough on here to make about a 3 to 4 inch medium-sized dubbing loop. Nothing super thick, because this is all basically going to be piled up right against the front of the bead here. I'm going to wrap this in, and notice I'm staying right in front of the bead. I'm not going up the hook shank here, because if I do, that's going to reduce the amount of space that I have for my hackle when I tie that in. So my dubbing is actually staying right in front of that bead, and it's just piling up right here, and a couple of wraps through it to secure it, and then move the thread up to the front. When I do that, I can use my thumbnail to kind of pile it back together, and it's right up on that bead. I'm going to take a little dubbing brush. This is nothing more than the hook side of some Velcro that's glued down to just a little flat stick, and I'm going to tease some fibers out here, and this is just going to help it look a little bit more blended from the hackle to the bead. You could even possibly forego this step, but I think it looks a little bit better. You don't have to get crazy with it. You just want to get a few fibers sticking out there, then get your thread right back up against the bead there. This is just a soft hackle, a hen cape. It's dyed black that I'm going to use here for the hackle in front. I don't need any of the fluffy fibers here, so I'm going to go ahead and peel those off. Discard those. We're going to tie this in by the tip up here, but I don't need all these fibers. What I'm looking for is basically about an inch worth right through here, these longer fibers for my legs. I don't need the shorter ones up here. So I'm going to start this down just a bit from the very tip, separating those. I'm going to go ahead and cut that excess off here, so all I have is just a small little triangle on the front. I'll set that along the hook shank here, and I'll lash that down so it's right tight against the dubbing, then bring my thread to right behind the eye of the hook. At this stage, all I'm going to do is palmer this around about 4 times. You could go a little bit longer, more turns. You could put 5 in if you want to have a few more legs on this, but 4 seems to get it. I want to stroke those back and try and get those fibers all going backwards so that none of them, like that one there, are getting lashed down pointing forward. And I think I'm going to go ahead and put one more wrap in here just because I have enough feather. It'll show you what a nice collar looks like. Wrap that down. I'm just going to fold that back and stroke all those fibers back to make the head. And the head here is nothing more than a little bit of thread wraps to help keep all those fibers all wedged backwards and not coming forward. I don't want to build up a large head on this, so I'm just putting in a few wraps, securing with the whip finish. And then the rest of the feather right here just pops right off. It's a nice, quick, easy way to tie your feathers in and palmer those around. I'm going to take my head cement and put just a half a drop around on the head there, and that is our mop fly. Again, as you can see, with the bead right here in the middle and the hackle right up there, this is going to tend to float through the water a little bit more than it is going to sharply jig, which is what I'm looking for. If needed, I could go to a smaller bead on there to even sink a little bit slower, but that's a size that seems to work pretty well. Other popular colors that I like to tie this in are a brown, and I'm using a black bead on that one as well. An orange. This is a kind of a fluorescent, maybe a bright orange with a fluorescent orange bead, as well as chartreuse with a chartreuse bead. Both the orange and the chartreuse, you could go ahead and just have a black bead right in there if you want to. It's just going to make everything, look, the front half of this look darker and black. But I like the chartreuse bead in there. So that's the mop fly. It's a great panfish fly. It's a really good trout fly, I found, if I'm looking to search around. So if I'm heading some water that I haven't fished before or fished in a while, I'll go ahead and throw this on, even high stick it down through some holes, just to see what it dredges up. For panfish, it's a great little fly. You can tie this in a little bit smaller hook size. The thing is, the mop bodies generally don't come too much smaller. I haven't found them to in a smaller size or even a larger size than what comes like this. Appreciate you joining me today, tying the mop fly. If you like the videos that you see on this channel, please please subscribe, hit the notification icon so that you get notified whenever new videos come out, which is generally once a week. And help support the channel by sharing. Please send a link to this fly or any of the other flies that I've tied to any friends or anybody that you know, and pass the word around. In the meantime, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.